from the Outside Looking In podcast. I'm Ricky Gleeson, and you are?
I am Earl Charlton, supporter at North East Homeless.
Nice. And we've got a guest on today. We've got Ben Ashcroft. Ben, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. So, Ben, you are an author, published author of the book that you've got behind you, 51 Moves, that I bought that last week and thought, yeah, I'll read that before he comes on. And I woke up this morning and realized that I hadn't read it. And I just read it in a day. And 51 Moves, the title is because, just to keep it sweet so that people know, like punchy, if you like, you got took into care through no fault of your own, about, was it 11 or 12 years old?
Yeah.
And you got moved between places and foster homes a total of 51 times before you left care and inevitably ended up in the shit, so to speak. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment?
Certainly is. 51 moves, 37 different placements, and 33 convictions in that same amount of time between 11 and 18.
Between 11 and 18, so 7 years, yeah, which in the grand scheme of things isn't long. And a lot of times we're moving. Earl, obviously you've been in care. I've been in care when I was young, from 4 till 8. You was in care. And as soon as I spoke to you about it, Earl, as soon as I said that you got moved around lots, you seemed to just get that straight away.
Yeah, well, there's one thing, as I said to Ricky, when you mentioned it, the 51 times being moved, I remember a lot, and I talk about a lot, but one thing I haven't counted is how many times I was moved through the ages of 14 to 16, and throughout South Tyneside care homes. There's not that many, but I was moved multiple times between them.
Ben, obviously, yeah, I did move. I was so young, but again, it was a long time ago, but I got bounced about as well. I went to a few different foster homes, and I was in one children's home and a few different foster homes, but I can't remember. Ben, do you mind sort of explaining why you got, obviously I've read the book, so I know that effectively you didn't do anything wrong. Your mum just didn't come home one day. Would you mind sort of just touching on why you got took into care and how that happened?
Yeah, so, I had a stable-ish life when I lived in Sawby Bridge, but seen a lot of domestic violence and moved, and my mum had been married a few times in quite quick succession, really. But when I moved from Sawby Bridge, which is all green and playing fields and canals and rivers, I got moved to an estate, which at that time was the roughest estate in Halifax. But I was born there, but when I was 2, I moved out of there. So when I moved back there when I was 10, I didn't know anybody, and it was kind of the opposite of where I'd been living to now. All of a sudden I'm in the middle of this estate, and there's kind of gangs in middle and gangs at bottom. And my life had been playing football and fishing and that kind of stuff, so I've not experienced that type of thing. So at that time I stayed in, kind of in fear of going out in case I got bullied or attacked by these gangs, because I didn't know anyone, even though I was born there. But after a short while, my brother moved back from my dad's. He turned up with 2 bin liners and got dropped off and moved in with us. And he'd been beaten by my dad's wife at that point with a belt, and she'd marked him up and that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of happy that he'd moved back to us, because I got to share a bedroom with him. Which I'd not really done, because he'd stayed at my grandma's and my dad's and bits and bats kind of thing. But at that point, he listened to like rave music, like Fantasia and Ark and all this kind of stuff. So I enjoyed that kind of music. So I was enjoying him being there. But I'm not sure if he felt the same, because he's 3 years older. So I was his younger brother, probably annoying brother. But also when he moved back, it gave me the freedom to leave the house, because he knew people in that area. So from there, kind of went out, and for example, one day I went to the local reservoir, and police did a splash scheme. So they've got like young people on fringes of antisocial behaviour and crime, and did something positive with them, trying to kind of lead them away from that kind of lifestyle. One part of that. And we got there, and one of the boys, he had a pellet gun, a G10 repeater it was, and he's like, oh, shoot at him. And basically I shot at this canoe, and it turned out it was the local bobby from that area, canoe that it actually hit, and quite quickly we all run off. So day after, there were a knock on the back door at home, and there's this big rugby player, and it turned out he actually played for Bradford professional rugby as well as being a copper.
Right.
But no ever happened. He spoke to my mum, and I never got in trouble for it. So I kind of didn't learn anything from that other than thought, well, I can do what I want type thing. And from there, my behaviour got worse, and I was joining in the kind of low-level antisocial behaviour type stuff. And my mum were kind of drinking more, staying out more, because it were me and my brother and sister, and sometimes we'd all argue, and she just didn't cope very well, you know. I mean, I know now with hindsight, my mum were in care, so kind of, you know, she didn't have the sort of skills to manage three, like there's me, and then my sister's 14 months older, my brother's 3 years older, so we're all quite close and clashing and arguing, and then we're getting in trouble outside the house and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
she didn't have the skills to cope, I suppose, which, you know, I don't blame her for. She just never learned them things because she'd had a traumatic childhood and being in care as well.
Did she, your brother's the oldest, did she have him quite young?
I think she was 19.
Right. Yeah, still is quite young.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of start of it. Like, she started staying out more, drinking more, and then when it came up to near Christmas, she just didn't come home. And after a few days, I rang the police and said, look, I don't know if my mum's dead, alive, what she is, or whatever, because she'd not been in touch or all like that. So quite quickly, the emergency duty team, social worker turned up, and the police, and my sister went to one of her friends, which I'm glad she did. And then me and my brother were taken to a local children's home at that point, which were the first move. And then
well, that's the thing. When I was reading a book, that's the thing that sort of stood out, because you talk a lot before that time, and you were talking about grew up and you can tell in the book that you've got quite a sort of innocent life before you move to that estate, quite carefree. Like, you're talking a lot about, you know, fields, canals, fishing, your friends' houses, and it sort of sounds like that's the last time that you were truly happy, if you like. And then there's that whole lead up to you being taken in care. But when you get taken into care, it is literally just a case of you make a phone call to the police because your mum hasn't come home, and the next minute you and your brother are just, that's it, you're in the care system.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I mean, it was the point of moving into the children's home. So I've left my covers, my bedroom, everything that I had loved and have known has obviously gone at that point, apart from my brother, which didn't last too long.
No. And then,
Ben, sorry to interrupt there. Like Ricky said to me earlier, after this, you might want to go for a walk, and sort of, just listening to you, mate, and like getting picked up, getting taken to the care home. Can you remember what it felt like when you first went through them doors? I mean, you had your brother at first, so you had someone you knew. But can you remember that first sort of night, or how, like, the feeling it was going into that place?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, when we got there, I kind of didn't know what were going on, where I was, what we're doing, what were going to happen. Still didn't know if my mum were dead or alive. And then put in a bedroom. And which again kind of laid awake that night, and not all night, but laid awake thinking, how the fuck have I ended up here type thing, you know, because I've been moved from my own covers, my own bedroom, my own house, everything I knew and know. So all of a sudden I'm in a children's home with a few other young people. But like, luckily at that point I was still with my brother, so that gave me a bit of comfort.
Yeah.
And also with the area where my brother lived with my dad, so he knew people in that area as well, because that were a rough area too. So again, it gave me comfort because my brother knew people there as well. So it made it a little bit easier, but obviously there's still the separation and abandonment and all the feelings.
And it's just, sorry to jump in, it's just so sudden as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Literally 1 minute. I mean, I know that your mum hadn't come back, so there was that issue going on. But I mean, even that is 3 days. And then from you making a phone call, the police turn up, and in your mind, you've rung the police, they turn up to help you. And, you know, within hours, you're thrust into a completely different world that you weren't prepared for at all. It's not like it's not like it was down the line. So I mean, we'd get onto the offending, but when you're an offender and you've got your court date and you know you're going to prison, you prep yourself mentally for it. You know what I mean? And you lead up to it. But with that, I mean, and you're a little kid. And literally, that is it. 1 minute you are in a front room at your house saying, "Oh, right, my mum's not here," and the next minute you're in a children's home. It's awful. It's awful. Oh, what was the crack when you got took into care? Was it the same sort of thing? Like,
I was, there was a point at my mum always used to threaten. You know what I mean? Oh, because I was misbehaving. Oh, I'll send you into care. You go to care. You know. And then I think it was I got arrested. And when I got arrested, I ran away, got arrested, said, I'll run away again if you take me back home. They took me back home and my dad was there and he gave me a bit of a bollock, but I ran away again. That's when they put me in the care home in Henderson Road.
Yeah.
But we're going back to how it felt going into that the first time. At the beginning of this year, I went to do some closure for myself and give the kids some Easter eggs and everything.
Yeah.
And I felt like that little kid going back in there, and I remembered everything. You know what I mean? I remember the room I was in. I remember the shower I tried to hang myself in, and it was just, it just never leaves you, does it?
No. I remember being in there when I first got there. I think they were just changing to Channel 5 or something at the time, and there were only 4 TV channels, I think, at that point. I remember that.
Before all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I quickly went from my home environment to a children's home, and then quite quickly, that's where it rapidly went downhill. So within a week of being in care, say after a few days of being there, some other young people had refused to go to bed. And in the building where I was at this home, there were stairs at either end of it. So we'd run around constantly doing 360 around building, and staff would be following us and would be in and out of bedrooms and just pissing about basically. And then after about an hour, they're like, if you don't go to bed, you're getting locked up, we're going to ring police. So first night, I'm like, fucking hell, I'm off to bed, mate. Went to bed. And then kind of the day after, they'd called me and my brother into office and said, oh, your mum's been found. She's been in Blackpool, drunk, blah, blah, blah. Your sister's going on, but she don't want you two back. So that was sort of, for me, the start changing my behaviour. Like, well, I've been abandoned. I'm not wanted, felt unloved, not in my own environment at home. I'm in this children's home. There's other people misbehaving and carrying on and doing stuff. Fuck it, I'm going to join in as well. And that's kind of how it started for me.
You weren't just a victim. You weren't just a victim of the home environment. You were a victim of the environment that you were in as well, with the care homes. You didn't know any better.
Exactly. I need to feel part of.
Yeah, you're always going to join in as well, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? Because that's just basic human survival. Especially when you're a kid, you join in with what's going on around you. And I don't know. I mean, I always sort of fell into the wrong crowd, but that was, I think, in a children's home environment at that age. If everybody else is doing that, that's what you're going to do, innit? And I don't know. I then wrote, because I know where you're leading with this, and I wrote 2 notes. Your mum refused to have you back, and that was a turning point, which is what you were just talking about there, Ben. And then the next thing that I wrote was you were arrested for not going to bed, pretty much, from what I can tell.
It was bang on, literally. So basically, the thing we'd done after 3 days, running around and stuff, we did that after like about a week of me being there. And they're like, same kind of carry on, running around, not really being abusive or like threatening to sort of staff, I wouldn't imagine, really. We're just more pissing around and running around. And they said, same again, if you don't go to bed, we're going to ring police, you're getting locked up. Well, this time, because I wasn't allowed home and other kids were there, I'm like, well, fucking do it then. And within about 10 minutes, police were at the door, were handcuffed, slapped about and told it's yes sir, no sir, you little bastard, when you get to custody in car. And 3 of us got arrested, all put in different cars. And then basically got threatened on way to a police station by this officer. When we got there, he did say, he's like, when you go in there, it's yes sir, no sir, you little bastard, and that. And at this point, I'm freaking crying and frightened and thinking, what the fuck's going on? I've now gone from being at home to a kid's home. Now I'm in Bridewell, area waiting to go through into custody and getting slapped about and told it's yes sir, no sir, you little bastard, which obviously at that age is quite a frightening experience to have. And then I went in and kind of booked in and put in cell 11, and then put in there, and there were no light on, no mattress, no cover, and door just shut behind me. So I'm sat in pitch black in a cell with no cover and no light, no mattress. And obviously, again, that's a frightening experience because you don't know what's going to happen and what's going to go on. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a frightening thing. 1 minute I'm running around in kids' home, next thing I'm in a fucking pitch black cell with no mattress and cover and that kind of stuff, you know. So again, quite a frightening experience. And also,
sorry, what?
No, I was just saying, did you get your microwave breakfast?
No, I didn't get that, but I got released before that. I'll get onto it now. So I got put in this cell, and after a few hours, the appropriate adult came, duty social worker from ED, and then got given my rights and read my rights, and then put back in a cell again. And then a couple of hours after that, this emergency duty social worker turned up and said, right, you're getting moved now. So at this point, I'm getting moved 11 miles away to foster parents. So now, within that week, I've been split up from my mum and sister, put in a children's home. Now I'm being split up from my brother, and now being sent on my own 11 miles away on my own, which again is another part of what, and the experience I had with the police officers, you know, when I look back at that, I think if the officer had dealt with me in a certain way and treated me better and
you were
been more of
criminalized.
a positive role model,
well,
I would have probably learned something from that, but I didn't. I got slapped about and told yes sir, no sir, you little bastard, and basically made to feel worthless, small, and freaking like, oh, so from there, that kind of, I had my back up against police, like fuck them type thing. Do you know what I mean? And then being moved now, I'm on my own, away from everyone and everything I know. So that is the kind of the start of running off and meeting other people, because in Halifax at that point, there were about 7 or 8 children's homes. So there were a lot of young people that would all meet up from all these different homes and cause chaos in town centre and around it and drinking.
Well, that thing with the police is what they did there is they criminalized you from an early age. Do you know what I mean? They feel like you were a criminal when actually, like I was saying, I've got it on the notes, but actually you got arrested because you didn't go to bed. Do you know what I mean? Which, I mean, even if you are going to get in trouble for that, it's not something that you should be getting slapped around for and being made to feel like you're a criminal. And when you do it at that early age, you know, if you tell someone they're something for long enough, they start behaving like that. So when you're telling a little kid, when you're treating a little kid like he's a criminal, eventually they have the mindset that, well, I'm a criminal. And that's when they start behaving like criminals. Effectively, when you get treated like that, you're being criminalized. And is it fair to say that that is where it all starts just becoming really chaotic with the behavior, the arrests, and the constant moving?
Yeah, for sure. Kind of that was my first conviction for a Section 5 public order, breach of the peace, or to prevent a breach of the peace, which basically, like you nailed it, it were refusing to go to bed. It were a cop-out from the staff that were there, paid to care for me. You know, it's not like they were getting assaulted and all this kind of stuff. You know, we were young people, children, just messing about. You know, I don't think that really were taken into consideration, really. More of a cop-out. We'll ring the police, we'll get them gone, and we'll have a much comfier night doing next to no. That's kind of my take on it now.
What was the crack with you in children's home? Because you were, obviously, I was young, so I don't really remember anything about my time in children's home.
Very similar to Ben's experience, and unfortunately, many other kids, you know, things have changed a little bit. But most nights, or some might be only one member of staff on, and you've got like 7, you know. I remember there was one man I used to keep his because he used to get his 20 fags and play Monopoly and get loads of munchies, you know. But the rest of the day, I mean, the rest of the nights and that, it was just like something else. We all run around riot. But yeah, we used to get out when we wanted. But like when they give you £2.50 pocket money and stuff like that, you know, it's like you want to do things, but they're not giving you the
Yeah.
things what kids want to do. So you get all your own mischief, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Ben, obviously after that you start getting moved around lots, and there's a bit of a book where you go back to visit your mum on the estate, and you were saying there that when you first got to that estate you were scared because there was gangs everywhere, but I get the feeling that sort of once you've been in the system for a little bit and you've been toughened up, if you like, you go back and you're no longer scared. The sort of kids you were avoiding, you're suddenly very much like them, so your behavior sort of escalates crime wise. Is that right?
Definitely, like crime and behaviour, like being in care and then feeling unloved and wanted and all them things, it almost makes you numb to a certain point, and you do feel a lot of things. But then I used to think, well, if I'm living in a kids' home with 6, 7 other young people, you know, if they're going to be cold, I'll be fucking freezing, you know, and I would try go to a different level than other kids in there to try to get respect, I suppose, or to fit in, or for them, basically. When I look back on it, it was fear driving that, because I didn't want to get bullied or, you know, picked on by other kids. So I thought, well, I'll go next level type thing. You know, if they're going to start with me, then I'll come back at it. But like I say, I think that a lot of that was fear driven, not because I wanted to be like that. It was fear. And you also have to act a certain way. And quite quickly, being in care and hanging around with other kids, it was kind of no grassing, no sex offending, no this kind of sort of mentality. And that mentality quickly got in because my brother were a few years older and I was kind of hanging around with the older boys. So they were, I suppose, my positive role models because they were doing that. So I should do that, which obviously in the real world, it's not like that. And that became normalized behavior for me. So quickly fitted in to that and felt part of. And you know, it's like I say, you know, them, a lot of them young people I were in care with almost became like family because we kind of connected, and on this drinking and drugs and committing offences and running away and all that kind of stuff we did together and stuff. So you kind of, you have to act a certain way as well, you know. So you want, especially when I was getting moved out of authority, you know, because I'd have a Yorkshire accent, getting moved to Manchester, Bolton, wherever. So again, you have to act a certain way.
Ben, it's like a mirror image, mate, to listen to you and how it was paved out for you. Again, I came out of jail on my 16th birthday from Law Newton, and from 14 to 16, who I got round were the elders, you know, took me under their wing, so to speak. And there was things I did, I knew there and then it wasn't right and it was wrong, but I did it because it was acceptance and I was accepted by these guys, and not having that acceptance from the people my age, that's what I adapted to in their lifestyles. And as you know, I don't have to say imagine, as you know what I mean, they can go out of control really easily. And criminal activity, 15-year-old kid, you know what I mean, 14-year-old kid breaking into supermarkets, you think you're part of it until you realise you're the one going through the window and they're waiting outside for you to hide the stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like, but again, you thought you were great, you thought you were part of something, and you thought you were on top of your game, you know, and seeing the rewards after. I know now you didn't get what you actually thought you were getting, but it was a reward, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience with that, but instead of kind of burgling and stuff like that, we went out and we were doing robberies and knife point robberies and false imprisonments and all that kind of stuff. And like you, just, you know, I didn't get my equal share of that because the older boys got it. What I got because some of the older boys had just got their own flats. So we'd go out so on a normal day when we're in that stuff and taking drugs to pay for the drugs, we'd go into a shop and then they'd have a till under a button under the till. So you press it until it opened and you grab money and then we'd run off with the money out of it with an handful, and then go buy a family day rover and then travel around West Yorkshire on this bus doing robberies in different places, and then do one there and then get on a bus or train somewhere else and keep doing that until we had enough money at the end of the day, and then come back to Halifax and go to one of these flats and then they'd buy loads of drugs, and which at that point was heroin and crack and stuff like that. So I was kind of taking that stuff from sort of 13 years old. The first time I had it, crack were my mum's brother gave me crack when I was 12. So that was the first time I had that. I smoked weed at 10, but then by sort of 13, I was on heroin and crack. But I didn't know about addiction. I was just taking it because it made me feel different. Because at that point I was also running away from everywhere I was placed and then sleeping in waste paper skips, bus station toilets, sneaking into other children's homes with other young people and hiding under their bed. So I run away from my home to someone else's and hide under the bed. So I was with other people type thing, But I didn't know about addiction at that point at all. All I knew is if I took heroin, I wouldn't feel anything. And that's what I wanted to feel, nothing.
Yeah.
And also within that, also became kind of addicted. I'm more hooked on not giving a fuck at that point, literally. Yeah. So I was saying when I got to a children's home, if I didn't like it, I'd throw a TV through a window or I'd create so they moved me if I didn't like it there, or I'd run off anyway. And some placements or places I will put only lasted 24 hours, if that, and I were off to another one because I disrupted the whole home or the house or wherever I will place. So I suppose that were a bit of manipulation on my side as well, because if I didn't like it or have a nice feeling for it, then I'd create knowing they're going to move me.
Yeah.
So
that thing with the drugs, when people, I know what you're saying about it made you feel nothing, but when people, because I used to take a lot of drugs and a lot of people would say, oh, it's just, you're taking drugs just to forget about the environment you're in, but it was really about that. You were saying it there, it's with drugs, the people that are vulnerable for it are people that haven't got a lot of gratification, so they don't get a lot of rewards, etc. I've just been sort of reading up on stuff like this recently. So you don't get, especially when you're young, you're not getting a lot of rewards. You're not in a sort of typical environment where you're doing the normal things that you get praise, and like what you keep saying, you weren't feeling any love from anybody. Nobody was ever saying I love you. Nobody was ever telling you were a good person or something. So what it is with the drugs, you get instant gratification. So the moment you take that drug, you feel better, and there's no point, even though me and Earl make a point when we do these podcasts, we're never glorifying drug use.
You're breaking up, kid.
Right, well, I'll keep going. Me and Earl were clear that glorifying drug use, but we've got to be grown up about it. And the reason people take drugs is because it makes them feel good. So that's why people like us are so vulnerable to drug addiction.
I agree totally. That's exactly why I took drugs, because for one, everyone else were doing it. Two, it made all that shit going round in my head calm down and not feel all and change, just to change the way I felt. And once I'd had drugs, I felt all right. I felt comfortable. Yeah. When I didn't have that, I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I didn't want to be me, really. And I was kind of fitting in and committing offences and taking drugs and stuff. It went on my bucket list when I was younger. Do you know what I mean? I want to be a drug user. I want to commit offences. I want to go to a security unit. I want to go to a young offenders. I want to be in recovery for the rest of my life. And were in my head when I lived in Salford Bridge. My life just became that very quickly.
Well, you know what you were saying there about how it became very quickly. I was talking to Earl about this as well. I don't know if you can hear us or not. His internet might be down at the moment. But I was saying that I
can hear you. I can see you.
Yeah, with me, that's the big thing. That's the thing that I always remember. Is just how chaotic it got, how quickly it got chaotic. So I went from just a kid. Even though I'd been expelled from school, I was still just a kid sitting in my front room, a 15-year-old kid. And then within 2 years, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing, I was in and out of young offenders, living on the streets of Slough, homeless, taking so many drugs, it was stupid. And there's two bits. I wrote this down, Ben, if you don't mind me reading it. It's from your book. I don't want to read too much of your book because I want people to buy it. But there's two bits at the beginning of the book. There's a bit where you say, I have a game of football tomorrow against Sacred Heart School and I'm looking forward to it. As are all the other boys in the team. I'm happy, very happy. I go fishing, I play football, I play in the woods, I have friends, and I'm the captain of the school football team. And then you're talking a year or so later, there's a bit where you write in it, I got charged with robbery. So now I was on bail for aggravated twok, which is taken without owner's consent, public order section 4, affray, criminal robbery. All of this had happened in 5 months, during which times during which time you were moved over 10 times. So it's just for young people that end up in that situation. I don't think people outside of the situation realize just how chaotic it is, just how quickly it happens, and why it just engulfs them. Do you know what I mean? It's just so quick that you go from one kind of lifestyle to that's it. You're part of the system. You're in and out of trouble. You're looked at as a criminal. Everything just happened so quickly, and it was so much chaos that there's no way back. Almost you're into it so quick that there's no way back. I don't know if that was the same for you. Like, just
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at that point, like, involved, no one made me do these things. I chose to do these things with these other people that
yeah,
I were being looked after with. So no one kind of made me do. I chose to do that because I found comfort in it. I found sort of unity within my friends who I were growing up with in care, and almost became family and felt like family because I didn't really have any, didn't really see mine at that point other than kind of my brother and stuff. So no, I mean, I joined in, 2-footed first. I was straight in and, not accepted that is the way that it's got to be, because that is, like you said, very quickly gone from that to being involved in all this stuff. I know I was one of the younger ones, but to me, I thought they were great at that point, like,
yeah,
because, well, this is what they do and stuff. So I need to do that stuff, so, I didn't have positive role models,
no,
At the
no,
time, I thought it was because that's what everyone did, and that became normalized for me. That was normalized stuff every day. We're doing robberies, we're drinking, we're taking drugs, we're terrorizing areas and stuff. Because sometimes there'd be 15 of us from different children's homes, all going all over the place, and it were, like you say, it was pretty hectic, very
yeah.
quickly.
I
But
know
I
you sort of
accepted that was now my life.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's your life. That's just I mean, by saying that, when I was 16 and when I was 16, 17, I'd started really falling into just getting arrested all of the time. Do you know what I mean? I was just constantly getting arrested. I had no qualifications. I couldn't get a job. And there was a point where I just accepted that the only way that I was ever going to make any money was through crime, which isn't true. Do you know what I mean? Now I look back and think, if only I could have grabbed myself, if I could show myself then me now and say, actually, mate, just go and wash some dishes for a bit, get your head together. And there's lots of options out there, but it is the sort of system. I don't know if it intends to, but it makes you feel like, you are a bad person and that's all you'll ever be. And the only way that you're going to get through life is by being that bad person. I know that you then sort of progress through the type of places you go. In fact, no, what I wanted to talk to you about actually, which is something that I really can get on board with, is that your foster parents. You met some nice foster parents. You met some not so nice foster parents. I was in foster care. I was very, very young. But what I remember about foster care, I was in care. I got taken into care at 4 years old. I only know that I was 4 years old because I know that Adam and Eve's Prince Charming was out. That's another story where I thought I was the police when they took me. I've got a vivid memory of talking on a radio to Adam Ant. It's only now that I look back and think, I was talking to a copper, and they were just sort of tiding me over. But from there, I was in from foster homes, and I've got the same experience. Some of them were good, some of them were bad for different reasons. I'm very Indian looking, and this was in 1981, which wasn't a fun place for Indian looking people to be in general in the UK. It was, that was back in the day when being called a Paki was just everyday life. But I moved into some foster parents where the other kids were putting shit, piss into my bed and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And nobody was listening to me and I was getting in trouble. And obviously going through your book, you had some good foster parents. You had the witch and somebody else. I don't know if you want to touch on that, if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, can do. So basically, leading up to that, I had a curfew for the offences I'd been committing, and it was a 7-7 curfew. So I had to be in at 7 p.m. and not allowed out before 7 a.m. in the morning. And I used to breach this almost on a daily basis. And I think in a couple of months, I'd been up in front of a judge about 40 times at 60 days. put in court, and the magistrate got fed up of me being there, and basically they said we want him moved out of authority and stuff like that. And I went to a place in Derbyshire, and then from there, because that were only a sort of 28-day placement, they sent me to Bolton, which, as you've read in my book, you know, it wasn't a very nice experience. I was sharing a room with a Scouse lad who were there, and basically the guy, I don't even like to call him a foster man, just him, he had like you know, when you go fishing and you have a metal bar that kills fish, he had that on his keyring, so he hit us on the head with that, and it would obviously have little lumps where we'd been hit on the head with it and stuff. And then, because I was from Yorkshire and he was from Liverpool, so he'd call us both different names and stuff because we weren't from that area type thing. And then in the morning we'd get kicked out because we weren't in education until you're not allowed back into 4:30 in evening, like tea time. So we'd be out basically all day, roaming around, being a bit mischievous and whatever.
So.
Well, exactly, yeah, and quite close to this foster placement was a building site, and they had dumper trucks and all that kind of stuff. So we'd go on there and like drive them round and stuff when there were no workmen on there and stuff, and break into. So, you know, just basically just entertaining herself, you know. And plus, you know, I preferred being away from that house, even though we got kicked out in the morning because we weren't in education. I didn't want to be there anyway. But yeah, we quickly made friends with other people in that area who were kind of just like us, I suppose, but lived with the parents, so we kind of joined in with them, I suppose. And then we run off to Liverpool, to where the boy were from. And then we got split up, and then I handed myself in and then got took back there, and the abuse and the emotional and physical and mental abuse continued. And at that point, I'd fucking had enough, you know. So I walked to Bolton train station and hid in toilets on the way home to Halifax. And then when I got back to Halifax, I took an overdose and got put into a hospital, children's hospital. And then from there, I went for a Viper ID, so the video recorded it, and I disclosed what had happened and stuff like that. And then from there, I got moved again, which I was glad I did, because my choice when I run back to Halifax, because I was running away from the abuse, I would rather be dead than go back to that foster placement. And that were my two choices, what I thought I had at that point. It were either kill myself or go back, thinking I'd be sent back if I were caught. So my option was to kill myself instead of be sent back there.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking there, you know, all of this is still happening to you. You know, so you've ended up being moved around loads. I know that you sort of turned into a naughty kid that was always running away, but now you're sort of being beat over the head by someone. Did anything happen to them, or did they just fucking get away?
I never knew what happened to them until later on in life, till I got my care files. That's the reason I got my care files about 12 years ago, to find out what happened to them, because I got moved and I never got told anything else again, what happened to them. But my behaviour were already quite a sort of harsh standard, like, because I didn't really have time for people, and my reactions to people were either violence, anger, shouting, swearing, being abusive and stuff. But when that happened, then from that kind of point, then I almost like just over from that experience turned against authority. Fuck social workers, I don't like them, they moved me. Fuck police, I don't like them because they beat me up and locked me up. Do you know? And it kind of became, then I sort of had my back against wall against everyone and other than my friends, because that's who I want to be around, you know.
And I mean, still, what I was saying is that all of this is happening to you because your mum didn't come home on 2nd of December 1995. You hadn't done anything wrong. It's not like you fell into sort of young offending and then just got worse because you were punished. You didn't do anything wrong. 1 minute you were sat at home, and then I mean, it progresses. You go into different sort of places, and because your behaviours get worse, you go into more secure units, and then you ended up in a proper secure unit, which in your book actually you said that kind of helped you being in that environment.
Which one are we talking? The Barton Moss one?
Yeah, I think so. Before Medway.
Yeah, Salford one. Yeah, so I went to. So I've been moved again to Withington in Manchester, to a home, but that again I were only still like 14, but all young people in there were like 16, 17, sort of a lot older. And again in there, my mental health were fucking on ground. I'd cut myself with razor blades just to see if it hurt and get 7 stitches here and all this kind of stuff. And it just escalated. And then once I tried to, like, I wrapped these Christmas beads around my neck and tied it to the door, and the door got pulled out. So when they pulled the door, it kind of pulled my head with it. And that's what happened. But then heard a scream, and then shortly after, police came and cut it off. And then I was stripped naked and taken to Manchester Bridewell and put in a paper suit and stayed there for a couple of hours. And then taken back to this home. And shortly after that, 3 big men turned up and said they're taking me to Barton Moss secure unit, which I didn't even know what one of them was at that point, to be honest. I just knew 3 big guys had taken me somewhere in a car, with one at either side of me and one driving, which again were a bit of a shock as well, because I'd never been in that experience, you know, or situation at that point. And as it turned out, I went to Barton Moss secure unit in Salford Eccles.
Is that a secure unit or psychiatric hospital?
No, it's a secure unit. So it had, like, one of Jamie Bulger killers were there.
Fucking hell, mate.
Had some pretty serious offenders in there.
And they're putting a young kid like yourself in that environment, you know what I mean? And you didn't out wrong for that, to be put in a secure unit.
Well,
like
I was there for welfare grounds. My solicitor had gone to magistrate and asked for a 28-day order to get me a full psychological assessment. So that's why I got sent there. Which one on criminal grounds and on welfare?
Sorry, did they try to medicate you as well?
No, not at the time, no. Not that I remember anyway, no. There were 8 units and 5 young people on each unit. And like I said, there were some pretty serious offenders there. Like, yeah. And I was there for welfare.
The reason I said it for, because when it comes to secure units, and all I can remember is being taken off into a unit and end up being 15 years old in a psychiatric hospital in Hastings, mate. And instead of trying to address the problem, they just medicated me on tranquilizers. You know what I mean? Then they went and put me, I think Ricky said there at one point was 16 or something, or they just wipe their hands of you and put you in a B&B. It was the same, if it was right, it was the same sort of scenario as myself. Came out of the psychiatric hospital, medicated up, and what they do, they put me in a B&B on my own to defend for myself and that, you know what I mean? It's just like such a broken service.
Yeah.
That came after, to be fair. Yeah. Like the secure unit, that was the first secure environment, and then
I was going to say, didn't you say in the book? Didn't you say the secure unit it did actually help you? It was the first place where maybe I don't know, maybe you got a chance to just stop. It sounded in the book like it was the first place you got a chance to just everything just slow down a bit, stop, calm down. Let's find out what's going on here. How did you go from there to Medway? Is Medway the young offenders institution, or Medway's before that, isn't it?
So from the secure, like I say, I got sent there originally for 28 days for welfare grounds. So I have a full psychological assessment, and over 3 months later, it had still not happened. So they let me out. So I'd not learned out other than education, like you were just saying. The education side of it was great. I love that kind of stuff, you know, because I thrived in education, but because I was getting moved or committing crime and taking drugs, I didn't get that opportunity unless I were in a secure environment where I thrived like I did in the secure unit. But because I was there for welfare grounds and this full psychological assessment hadn't been done in like 3 and a bit months, it's like, right, we're going to have to let him go because it hadn't been done type thing. So again, I've not really learned other than a bit of education while I was there. And then came out and just continued to do everything I was doing anyway before that. But at this point, they were kind of, so I'd been moved in a children's home, and then so I'd hit a guy with a phone in bus station and stuff like that. And so that, and then I were in a children's home, and basically the guy there had been getting done for something to do with offences against kids anyway. So I'd assaulted him and then been arrested because he wanted me done for it. So I got arrested, took to the police station and stuff. And then they released me back to that children's home. Whereas obviously I'd gone back and that boy was still there still. So he'd grasped on me, which is one of the things that I'd got drilled into me. This is what you don't do. And then because he committed sex offences, that was another thing, what you don't, you know, it's a no-no sort of stuff. So he's in front room doing his colouring and stuff, and I've gone in and I've picked one of his pens up and just stuck it through his ante table type thing because he grassed me up and he was a sex offender and they didn't move me, so it breached both of them two things that I'd been drummed into me, no sex offending and no grasses, and he'd done both of them to me, so kind of I had to act a certain way. And then kind of from there, that's when I got 6 months in Medway Secure Training Centre, which were the very first of its kind at that point.
All right, thank you for watching so far. If you could go onto our YouTube channel itself and give us a subscribe and share our videos, that would be really appreciated. Part 2 of Ben's stories coming up. Cheers.